Studio Series Transformers 1 Sentinel Prime was probably the figure from the TF1 lineup I was most excited to get my hands on, but I will admit that's not really saying very much. I don't know, the looks of a lot of the TF1 SS figures weren't really doing it for me. I got Optimus on release just out of sheer curiosity, and I was not impressed with it. I didn't think Megatron looked very good when I saw him in person, and the renders for Bumblebee and Alita looked really dodgy, although I have heard that Bumblebee is great. But Sentinel stood out to me as 1, a design that I like quite a lot more than the others, and 2, a Voyager class figure, so it would probably have the engineering to pull it off. And does it? Well, kinda. I don't know, let's take a look at him. So I'll admit, the sculpted detail and proportions on this guy are pretty good for the most part. There's a lot of solid detail work here that matches the film's aesthetic pretty flawlessly. The softly detailed curved shins with those knee pads that stand out a lot. The very simple thighs leading into the much more detailed torso. Love those angled armor pieces on the chest. And I love the way that the shoulders just overwhelm the chest entirely. They're so geometric and big. Reminds me a lot of the animated design. But unfortunately, I'm not a massive fan of the arms. I don't know, I don't think the sculpt is kind of taken too well here, and a lot of it looks very soft. The wings, however, do nicely to catch the eye. They may be a little skeletal from the front, but they work very nicely for the aesthetic. And then the head is probably the best moment of sculpting on this whole figure. This is a flawless visage. Really love the way that this sweeps back. They've really done a good job with capturing the aesthetic there. But yeah, I don't really have a problem with the details. Aside from maybe the arms and the feet being a little soft, everything else works fine. The problems that I have with the look of this thing are more from the proportions. Now I get it, this is how he looked in the film, but it doesn't translate too well to plastic. The long legs I can work around, although I do think maybe the shins are too stretched. But the arms and the way they kind of jut out of the shoulders, I just don't like the look of it. And they drop way too low. His hands were at his knees, not below them. Look, I get why this figure is this way. It's very close to the CGI model, but I just don't think it works physically. I really wish some proportional liberties would have been taken with this design and adapting it to a toy form. But in the end, this is what we've got, and I'm just not really into it. I will say the colors do work alright though. I think it shows up a little bit better on camera than in person, but there are metallic flecks in the blue, which does quite well to mirror the very shiny look of the film. There are also a few moments of painted gold, which I think work quite well, but unfortunately, a lot of the yellow on this figure is just a very flat yellow, and I don't know, it doesn't work too well for me. He looks fine, but I think if all of that had a slightly more metallic sheen to it, then I'd be a lot more lenient with the look of this figure. Those colors aside though, the rest of the paint is nice and cleanly applied. The light grey is a little plain, but the gunmetal is a nice touch. Really does well to contrast how bright a lot of the colors on this guy are. I don't know, from afar this figure looks absolutely fine, but once you start getting in close with it, I just find that there are some things that don't really work too well. There are some really truly great things about the look of this guy, but there's just an equal amount of stuff dragging it down, and it kind of hurts the figure overall. I don't dislike the look, but I'm not impressed. And I can't really say the accessories impress me either. The one thing this figure really needed was the big off Dark of the Moon sword. That was a really iconic weapon in the film, he used it several times. And I've said time and time again that a mediocre figure can be made a lot better by just giving them a melee weapon, but unfortunately all this figure comes with is this shield and these two null rays. And I don't think they look brilliant. There's some decent sculpting on the shield, but it's kind of washed out by the paint, and the null rays just look soft and meh. The shield looks fine on his arm, but if you stick the null rays in his hands, they just don't work. Makes him look even more gangly than he already is. The only thing that really justifies these being here, we'll get into in a little bit, but right now, I don't think these accessories are cutting it. Although worst comes to worst and you don't mind forking out for it, D&A are doing an upgrade kit that includes the sword, so that'll probably pick up this figure a little bit. But thankfully from here, we can start getting into some of the things that this figure does well. Like the posability, which is actually alright. The head is on a swivel and a hinge. Now I'm sure this seems a little limited to some people, but there is a feature we'll get into in a little bit that makes it all the more impressive that he can do this, and I do really appreciate it. The wings can flap a little bit, but they do have a dedicated looping angle, just like with angling up and down. The shoulders are a little bit strange, the outward movement is mounted kind of funny and is a little limited, and then the around movement is on a ball joint for some reason, which I suppose it gives him a little bit more wiggle room there, but just why? There's maybe the tightest bicep swivels I've ever encountered, decent elbows, nothing at the wrists, a waist swivel, the hips move out, forward and back pretty standardly, there's thigh swivels, some pretty underwhelming knees, and some weirdly placed ankle pivots, like why are the feet so tall? Yeah, the posing here is alright, it's nothing overly dynamic, but the figure itself isn't the most dynamic thing in the world. I think overall, in this mode at least, he does a lot better in your kind of public speaking hero poses, but I think that's kind of alright because he looks a lot more dynamic in his armored mode. which we will get to in a minute, right after I discuss one little problem that I have with this guy. Remember those weird shoulder ball joints? Well, out of the box, they were way too loose. The shoulders would rattle around when you moved him, he couldn't hold up his accessories and poses, it was just not a fun time. Fortunately, these are just ball joints which you can pop off quite easily, so I was able to use some kikis. You could easily use floor polish or super glue, just to thicken up those posts a little, and now it's absolutely fine, but it's just something to consider because I know for a fact mine is not the only copy that's like this. But with that aside, let's get into the best mode. Now, the conversion to get into the armored mode is pretty quick and simple. You're just opening a couple of panels and flipping out some other stuff and rearranging the feet slightly, which is fairly satisfying to do in all fairness. But good god, the presence he gains in this mode. In the regular robot mode, he stands about eye to eye with Optimus, but in this mode, he towers over him, both in stature and build. Just something as small as giving him a battle mask, arming him up a little, and spreading the wings can change the look so much, although I must admit, not a huge fan of the way the instructions tell you to have the feet. You know, they are just like this so he can stand properly, but closing up the feet a little bit more and plugging him into a flight stand makes all the difference. This mode is just so much more intimidating, it has a much more impressive vibe. Chances are this is how I'm going to display this guy. And you still have access to all the same articulation, including at the head with the battle mask flipped up, which is a nice touch. Now, the jet mode transformation is too easy. There's just really not enough steps going on here for me to call it an impressive transformation at all. You flip out the nose cone, you move the wings, you move the arms, that's it. Doesn't feel like there's enough moving parts here for it to be a Voyager. And the jet mode is alright. It is pretty nice and sleek from the top with the Cyclonus-y vibe, and I do enjoy the mostly blue body with the yellow wings. The nose cone and the thrusters are just about the only details here that's specifically for this mode, and they fit their purpose well. And you can plug the accessories on to give them a bit more visual interest. But I will say, the underside is quite untidy, no thanks to the nothing transformation. And there's no stand port, so I had to awkwardly balance him on a claw to get him in the air. I'll be honest, this figure has disappointed me a little bit. I don't think it's bad, but it's just really underwhelming and overly simple. And the fairly average posing in the armored mode are the only things it really has going for it. I definitely think this is better than Optimus. It has a lot less problems than that figure did, and if you want a transforming representation of the Sentinel screen model, then this does that well. But just as a figure in itself, I'm not really sure this is worth the Voyager price. Maybe if you can get this thing for deluxe price or a little bit over it, then it would be fine, but I don't know, this thing just doesn't justify itself enough to me. Maybe leave your opinions on the figure down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, then please show it some love, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to catch the next one. We're back to Age of the Primes, taking a look at a handsome young plane boy. And if you can't wait the whole week, then maybe check out the Patreon for the early access. Right now though, I have a Toblerone and it's calling to me, so ciao. Is it a bad thing that both these figures underwhelming me a little makes me want to check out the rest? What have I become?